y'all, it's AuntyFlocks. For those of you who don't know, I have been gone since the beginning of 2021. So kind of a long time. I went through kind of a mental breakdown where I really needed to take time off to just focus on myself. And then when I thought I was ready to come back, I found out my lease ends and am now forced to move. So it's been hectic. Jumping right back into things, probably the most asked question I get is what must my diet like for me to grow my glutes and these muscles? So let's start off with macros because that's probably honestly the most asked question out of that category that I get. And as always, I never want to waste anyone's time. So short answer, for protein, I eat my body weight in pounds plus 20 grams. For carbs, I do 1.5 times the amount of protein. And then for fat, I actually don't track it at all. Now, before I begin, I really want to say that I'm not a dietitian or I'm not a specialized person in this field. This is just really what works for me, and I just want to share it in case it helps someone else. But if you're looking for more of a long answer and an explanation why, I think honestly, this has been the only macro guidelines that have worked well for me. I tried having strict numbers in each macro category. I've tried intuitive eating. I've tried many different ways of doing this, and every single time I failed. And I'm gonna put a trigger warning here real quick because I think, again, talking about bad relationships and behaviors with food is really uncomfortable to not only speak about, but also to listen. But with that being said, I think that is what kind of triggered some of my bad relationships with food. So in my experience, when I tried having the very strict numbers of macros, because that's usually what, macro calculators spit out. And if you're new like me, that's the first thing you do, right? Google it and you get a macro calculator. And even fitness influencers and people into fitness really preach macros and these hard numbers. And so I think for most people, that's the first step to take. For me, when I was doing the very strict macros, right? So as an example, 150 grams of protein, 200 carbs, 70 grams of fat or whatever. Having those strict numbers, I honestly think is what triggered some of my bad habits and relationships with food. And the reason I say this is because when there's just such strict numbers, I think it becomes very, very hard to follow it, right? Making sure you have recipes throughout the entire day that fit these numbers to total it out, that's really hard. And for me, I couldn't really find recipes that always fit the numbers, and so I'd tweak them. And then it wouldn't really taste as good, to be honest. And for me, I'm just one of those people, if I don't like it, I'm not gonna eat it. And the issue was that when I didn't eat it and I ate out instead, or I ate something else instead, at the end of the day, when I saw that I didn't hit those numbers, I started feeling bad about myself. It was a really big issue because once I started developing kind of bad and negative feelings towards foods, I noticed that my behaviors changed. And what I mean by this is that, when you force yourself to eat things and you fall off track and you start to feel guilty, then you start looking at food as kind of the enemy. And I think, not to go on a rant, I know I'm known for my rants, but especially in society, we are told constantly to diet, eat this, not that, don't eat carbs and all these things. And the issue becomes, once you start hearing these things and you have a negative relationship with food, I think it's really, really easy to slip into eating disorder behaviors. I would go to restaurants and I would want to eat something, but it didn't fit my number, so I didn't do it because I was pretty much forcing myself to fit this specific diet to meet my fitness goals. And again, although I think it is beneficial for your fitness goals, it's really not good mentally. And if I've learned absolutely anything this year, is that your mental health is much, much more important than any other goal you have. So when I failed at that, I moved on to intuitive eating. And I think intuitive eating does work well for some people. It personally didn't for me because I'll be honest, I don't have the best self-control. I'm just one of those people, if I see something I want to eat and I don't have guidelines to kind of guide me away from them, I'll eat it. And the problem was that I was kind of just eating whatever I want and telling myself it was intuitive eating and it was fitting my fitness goals and all that stuff. But truthfully, looking back, I was definitely not getting enough protein. I think that was my number one issue with it. which is why I created these like macro guidelines for myself. Again, it's my body weight in pounds plus 20 grams of protein, 1.5 times the amount of carbs on protein, and then I don't track fat. And I found that by having these like guidelines, so still something to kind of sway me in the right direction, but not strict enough where it's, giving me kind of, again, I just hate saying this word because I don't want to trigger anyone, but eating disorder behaviors. I think it was just the perfect mix of why it works so well. So I came up with these guidelines because I started noticing my own food behaviors. For instance, right, like the protein. Everyone's pretty much preached like, hey, get your body weight in pounds in protein. And when I followed that, I realized I actually wasn't getting enough protein. And the reasoning behind that is because when you think about it, just from your eating behaviors alone, sometimes you don't finish all your food, right? Sometimes you have to run out the door and you just don't finish it. You don't lick the sauces off your plate, Sometimes you leave like a few bites and you just throw it away. I mean, there's multiple instances where you're not actually getting the full amount of food. And when I realized that, I realized I was throwing away protein that I thought I was eating. And that's actually why I add the 20 grams of protein. I think it's a safety net enough to make sure that not only are you eating your body weight in pounds, but if you happen to not finish something, or if you throw something away, or you just don't lick the sauces off your plate, it gives you enough leeway to make sure you're still getting enough protein. I also like the 20 grams extra because I noticed that if I do tend to go out, like for dinner, example, if I go to brunch or something and I'm switching out one meal during my day, I think getting that extra 20 grams can also fulfill that. Now for carbs, y'all, I know we've all heard it, like carbs are apparently the enemy, and I really truly believe that for a long time. And so upping my carbs is probably like one of the scariest things for me to do. I think one thing that people don't really talk about in terms of weight gain is that you do gain weight, including fat, in places that you might not necessarily want to gain. So for instance, like me, I gain weight on my face and my belly and like my back, like lower back, never my chest or my glutes because my genetics just hates me. And because of that, I was really scared to eat carbs, because you're pretty much preached by society that carbs mean fat. Without going on a rant though, the point I'm trying to make is that carbs are actually really important, right? They give you energy throughout the day, which you really need to have like hard workouts, especially on leg days. But not only that, it's actually really beneficial to muscle growth, right? And if you're like super into like hair and skin like I am, it's also really important to have for your hair. One of the biggest things I remember when I cut out carbs, because yes, I totally fell for that trap, is that my hair started falling out. So if nothing else gets you, not wanting to lose your hair might be one of them. And lastly, the reason why I don't track fats is because I realize I actually get quite a lot without adding them into my foods purposefully. So what I mean by this is every time I cook with oils, I'm actually getting fats. And a lot of the things that I'm eating also already have healthy fats in it. And the great thing for me about not tracking fats was that it made it really a lot easier to create recipes throughout the day to fit my macros. So, right, if I'm actually making a recipe now with these guidelines, I'm making sure I'm getting enough protein because I do have that specific number, right? And then I just add carbs, which is usually about 2 times more anyways. And then if I don't have to worry about fats, all I'm really concerned about is the protein. And I think this really works because you can start creating recipes and eating the foods that you like and you want. And again, the more you like the food, the easier this process is on you, the more likely you are to follow it. And with these macro guidelines, y'all, I eat pizza all the time. I eat quesadillas. I literally just had Kung Pao chicken the other day. I mean, it just allows you to eat more in a flexibility while still maintaining your goals. And it actually tastes good and you want to eat it and you want to follow it. And so it develops a good relationship with your food. For the next video, I'll go over, food behaviors and how to create recipes around that. Because one thing I've really learned about myself is that I'm just unfortunate. So I have a hard time eating a lot when I should be eating a lot because I want to gain muscle, right? And eat those extra calories. And then I struggle to eat less when I am on a diet and cutting and trying to lose the fat. So I just have this unfortunate thing where it's really hard for me to do both. And I've really realized that paying attention to your food behaviors and then combining that with recipes makes it a million times easier. Thanks for watching, y'all. Like and subscribe.